Hi, my name is Emily Carter. I'm 26 years old, and until a few months ago, I thought my life was finally coming together. I work as a marketing coordinator for a tech startup, have my own little apartment in Portland, and had been dating my boyfriend, Jake Reynolds, for almost 3 years. Valentine's Day was supposed to be perfect this year. I had this whole dreamy idea that maybe, just maybe, Jake would propose. I even wore the red silk dress he once said made me look like the main character. But that night, everything I believed about my family and my relationship shattered. My parents had invited me and Jake over for a casual family dinner. My cousin Madison was there too, of course. She's always been the star of the family. Prettier, funnier, the one everyone praises. Dinner started off normal. We were sitting around the big oak table, candles flickering, plates of my mom's famous lasagna steaming. I was just about to toast to love and new beginnings when my dad suddenly put his fork down, looked straight at Jake, and said, "Jake, you know, Madison would make a perfect wife. Maybe you two should give it a shot." The whole table laughed. My mom, my aunt, even Madison blushed and giggled. But no one looked at me. Jake stayed silent. He didn't defend me. He didn't even hold my hand. I felt my heart sink into my stomach. In that moment, I wasn't a daughter or a girlfriend. I was just the family's punchline. And as everyone kept laughing, something inside me snapped. I realized I couldn't keep living like this, constantly proving myself, waiting for scraps of respect. This was my breaking point. I wish I could tell you that Valentine's Day was the first time I felt invisible, but honestly, I've been invisible my whole life. Growing up in the Carter household was like being cast as the supporting character in someone else's movie. I was the quiet, bookish kid who loved painting and writing, but my cousin Madison, she was the golden girl. Even though she didn't live with us, she might as well have, because every family gathering was basically about her. She had perfect blonde hair, straight A grades, homecoming queen titles. You name it. I still remember my 10th birthday party. I was so excited I had asked for a sketchbook set because I loved to draw. But when Madison showed up, my dad practically forgot it was my birthday. He kept saying, "Look at Madison's science project. She's going to be a doctor one day." By the end of the day, everyone was gathered around Madison's project board while my cake sat half-eaten on the table. It wasn't just birthdays. It was everything. When I got into the school art show, Dad called it cute. When Madison won a spelling bee, Dad threw a whole barbecue to celebrate. When I came home crying because I got bullied, Dad told me to toughen up. When Madison scraped her knee, everyone rushed to get her bandages and ice cream. Mom never said much. She just smiled politely and told me not to be jealous. "Madison doesn't mean to outshine you, honey," she'd say, but she never once stood up for me. So, I worked harder. I became the girl who stayed up late studying just to hear my dad say, "Good job." But it never came. It was like living in a competition I didn't sign up for, and no matter what I did, I was always losing. And maybe that's why Jake meant so much to me. He was the one person who made me feel like I was enough, at least, until that night. As Valentine's Day got closer, I poured every ounce of myself into making it special. I spent weeks planning the perfect evening. I bought Jake's favorite cologne as a gift. I reserved a table at a little Italian restaurant where we had our first date, and I even worked overtime so I could afford the new dress I'd been eyeing. I wanted that night to feel like a fresh start. Not just for us, but for me. Like maybe, if it all went perfectly, my parents would finally see me as someone worth respecting. But the weeks leading up to that night were exhausting. Dad kept making his usual comments, comparing me to Madison. "Madison just got promoted again. You should ask her for career tips. Madison's boyfriend treats her so well, Jake. Learn a thing or two." Every time he said something like that, I could feel my cheeks burn. I'd glance at Jake, hoping he'd say something, defend me, just once. But he would just shrug it off and change the subject. 2 nights before Valentine's, I overheard something that made my stomach drop. I was in the kitchen at my parents' house, helping Mom set the table when I heard Dad talking to Madison in the living room. He said, "You and Jake would make a great couple. Emily's too sensitive for him." I froze. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the silverware. Madison just laughed softly, like it was some kind of joke. I wanted to scream, but instead I stayed quiet, swallowed my feelings, and pretended I hadn't heard a thing. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering if maybe Dad was right. Maybe Jake really would be happier with Madison. But the next morning, I pushed those thoughts away. I told myself Valentine's Day would be different. Jake would see me in that red dress and remember why he fell in love with me. Maybe he'd even put a ring on my finger. I walked into that dinner with a hopeful heart, completely unaware that by the end of the night, my world would come crashing down. Valentine's dinner started beautifully, at least on the surface. The dining table looked like something out of a magazine, candles glowing, wine glasses sparkling, soft music playing in the background. I sat next to Jake, my heart thumping, trying to hide my excitement. For a while, it almost felt normal. We talked about work, about the weather, about Madison's new promotion. Of course. I forced myself to smile, to play along. But then, right as dessert was being served, Dad set his fork down and said the words that would change everything. "You know, Jake, you really should think about dating Madison. She'd make a perfect wife." The room went silent for a split second, and then everyone burst out laughing. Mom chuckled softly. My aunt nearly choked on her wine, and Madison blushed like she was flattered. I just sat there frozen. I waited for Jake to say something, anything, to defend me. But he didn't. He just gave this awkward half smile and looked down at his plate. It felt like someone had punched me in the chest. Then Dad added with a smirk, "You know how emotional Emily can be? Madison's much more easygoing." That was it. Something inside me snapped. I pushed my chair back so hard it screeched against the floor. The laughter stopped. Everyone stared at me like I was overreacting, but I didn't care. I grabbed my coat, my hands shaking, and without saying a word, I walked out. The cold February air hit my face, but it felt better than sitting at that table one more second. As I stepped outside, I heard Madison's voice faintly behind me. "Emily, wait." But I didn't. I got into my car, slammed the door shut, and for the first time in my life, I didn't cry. I just sat there, gripping the steering wheel, breathing hard, thinking, I'm done. I'm done begging for respect. I'm done being the family's joke. When I drove away that night, I didn't just leave dinner. I left my old life behind. When I got home that night, I finally let myself cry. Not the quiet, polite tears I was used to hiding, but full, shaking, ugly sobs that soaked my pillow until sunrise. By morning, something inside me had shifted. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was done. I called Jake first. My hands were trembling as I held the phone, but my voice was steady. "Jake, I can't do this anymore. I needed you to stand up for me, and you didn't." He tried to apologize, said he didn't want to cause a scene, but that just made it worse. I hung up before he could finish. Then I went into action mode. I listed half my furniture online, packed my clothes into boxes, and started looking for a place far from Portland. Within 2 weeks, I found a small apartment in Seattle, just a studio with creaky floors and one window, but it felt like freedom. I quit my job too. It was scary, but I'd saved enough to get by for a while, and I found freelance marketing work to pay the bills. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. In Seattle, nobody knew me as Madison's cousin. Nobody compared me to anyone. I joined a local art class, started running at a nearby park, and slowly, piece by piece, began to feel human again. For the first time in my life, I could breathe. I could eat dinner without waiting for someone's approval. I could wake up without dreading what comment Dad would make that day. It wasn't easy. Some nights I still cried myself to sleep. But then, there were mornings I woke up smiling because I realized I was free. And freedom, I was learning, was worth everything I had given up. For a while, the silence was blissful. No calls, no texts, no friendly check-ins. But of course, it didn't last. It started with Mom. One Sunday morning, my phone buzzed with a message. "Your dad isn't feeling well. He's been asking about you. Please come visit." My chest tightened for a moment, then I remembered the last time I had seen Dad's face across that dinner table. I replied with a short, "I hope he feels better." I didn't go. A week later, I got a call from my aunt, gushing about Madison's engagement. "You should be happy for her. You know, if you hadn't left, maybe Jake would have proposed to you by now." Her words felt like a slap, but this time, I didn't break down. I just calmly said, "I'm exactly where I need to be." Then I hung up. The last straw was Jake. Late one night, he texted, "I think we made a mistake. Can we talk?" I stared at the screen for a long time, my heart pounding. Old me would have driven back to Portland, desperate for closure. But new me? I blocked his number. The next morning, Dad tried calling. I let it go to voicemail, and later, I sat listening to his message. "Emily, you're being dramatic. Family sticks together. Stop embarrassing us and come home." I deleted the message without replying. It was strange. Every attempt they made to pull me back only made me feel more certain I had done the right thing. I wasn't their punching bag anymore, and I never would be again. Tonight, I'm sitting on the little balcony of my Seattle apartment, sipping hot tea while the city lights sparkle below me. It's quiet, the kind of quiet that used to scare me, but now feels like peace. Sometimes I still think about that night, about the look on my dad's face, about Jake sitting there in silence. And you know what? I'm grateful. Because if they hadn't shown me exactly how little they valued me, I might still be sitting at that table, begging for scraps of respect. Now, I wake up every day knowing that I chose myself. I built this life from scratch, with my own money, my own strength, my own heart. And for the first time, I feel like I'm enough. If you're listening to this and you've ever felt like the second choice, I want you to hear me clearly. Choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's survival. You are allowed to walk away from people who keep breaking you, even if they share your blood. Family isn't proven by DNA, it's proven by love, respect, and safety. So tonight, as I watch the stars over a city that finally feels like mine, I'm not mourning what I lost. I'm celebrating what I found, me.